The vast emptiness of space had never felt more oppressive than in those final moments before humanity made its decision. For centuries, we had watched from the sidelines as galactic civilizations tore each other apart in an endless war that threatened to consume our entire spiral arm of the Milky Way. We were the silent observers, the forgotten species that no one considered worth recruiting. They called us primitive, underdeveloped. Some even labeled us as a quarantine civilization, too violent and unpredictable to be trusted with advanced technology. The Confederation of Allied Worlds had written us off as nothing more than curious primates who had barely managed to reach their own moon. The Empire of the Seven Suns viewed us as potential slaves, at best. Neither side bothered to notice how we studied their battles, analyzed their tactics, and most importantly, learned from their mistakes. The turning point came when a stray shot from an Imperial dreadnought obliterated our monitoring station on Europa. 57 lives snuffed out in an instant, dismissed by both sides as acceptable collateral damage. That was their first mistake, assuming we would simply accept it. Their second mistake was ignoring the emergency broadcast from the United Earth government that followed. To all parties involved in the ongoing galactic conflict, you have 24 hours to withdraw all military assets from the Sol system and its surrounding space. Failure to comply will result in immediate human intervention. The message was met with amusement across both fleets. The Confederation admiral, in particular, was quoted as saying, "What do they think they can possibly do? Throw rocks at our ships." The Imperial commander simply ordered his forces to maintain their position, treating our ultimatum as nothing more than the empty threats of a child. They didn't notice the massive mobilization happening on Earth's surface. They paid no attention to the thousands of seemingly primitive spacecraft launching from hidden bases across our planet and its colonies. Their advanced sensors dismissed our vessels as harmless transport ships, not worth targeting. After all, what threat could we pose to their energy shields and quantum weaponry? What they didn't know, what we had kept hidden for all those years of watching and waiting, was that humanity had been preparing for this moment since we first detected their war approaching our system. While they had spent centuries refining the same technologies, fighting the same way, we had been thinking outside their box, developing countermeasures they had never imagined possible. The clock ticked down on our ultimatum. Neither side budged. Their massive fleets continued their battle above our heads, raining debris onto our colonies, threatening everything we had built. At exactly 0 hour, the order was given. Operation First Strike was initiated, and humanity finally showed its cards. The next 5 hours would change the galaxy forever. But in those first few moments, as our primitive ships approached their battle lines, no one but us knew what was about to happen. No one understood that humanity had never been the primitive species they thought we were. We had simply been patient, waiting for the right moment to prove them wrong. Looking back now, I still remember watching those first transmissions from the front lines as our forces made contact with their fleets, the expressions on their alien faces as they realized their mistake. It's something I'll never forget. But that's the thing about humans that these ancient spacefaring races never understood. We don't need centuries of technological advancement to win a war. We just need the right plan, the right moment, and the burning desire to protect what's ours. This is the story of how humanity ended a galactic war in just 5 hours. This is the story of how we proved every assumption about our species wrong. But most importantly, this is the story of why you should never, ever underestimate the human race. What most history books won't tell you is that our response wasn't born from anger or revenge. It was built on decades of careful planning. While the rest of the galaxy saw us launching our first clumsy steps into space exploration, our best minds were already at work, studying every scrap of data we could gather about the ongoing war. The destruction of the Europa station wasn't just a tragedy. It was the catalyst we had been waiting for. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, one of the few survivors who managed to reach an escape pod before the station's destruction, described the moment that changed everything. We weren't even considered a target. The Imperial ship just fired through our position like we were nothing more than space debris. That's when we knew they would never see us as equals unless we made them. Our advantage lay in our perceived weakness. For years, both the Confederation and the Empire had grown complacent with their technology. Their energy shields could deflect any known weapon, their quantum drives could outmaneuver any conventional pursuit, and their AI systems could predict any traditional strategy. But they had fallen into the trap that every advanced civilization fears the most. They had stopped innovating. The United Earth Defense Force had developed something entirely different. Instead of trying to match their technology level, we had focused on its fundamental flaws. Project Achilles, as it was known to only a handful of people, had identified the one weakness that both sides shared: their absolute reliance on quantum-based technologies. Dr. Alexandra Rivera, the project's lead scientist, had made the breakthrough that would change everything. Their entire civilization depends on quantum field manipulation, she explained in a classified briefing just hours before the operation began. Their weapons, their shields, their communications, everything. They're so advanced that they've forgotten how to function without it. That's where we come in. The fleet that launched from Earth that day carried what appeared to be simple electromagnetic pulse generators, technology that both sides had long since abandoned as primitive and ineffective against their advanced shielding. What they didn't know was that we had discovered a way to create cascading quantum disruptions using nothing more than precisely calibrated electromagnetic waves. As our ships moved into position, the alien fleets continued their battle, barely registering our presence. Their sensors showed exactly what we wanted them to see: crude vessels with minimal energy signatures, the kind of ships you'd expect from a species that had just figured out how to break free of their planet's gravity. Ground control was dead silent as the countdown began. General Richard Thompson, who had spent his entire career preparing for this moment, gave the order that would echo through history. All ships, initiate Protocol Zero. Let's show them what humanity can do. The first wave of ships activated their disruptors simultaneously. To the alien fleets, it must have looked like a strange light show, beautiful but harmless energy patterns rippling through space. Then, one by one, their quantum fields began to fail. Shields flickered and died. Weapons systems went dark. Communication networks dissolved into static. Panic spread through their ranks as ships suddenly found themselves operating on emergency power, their mighty quantum cores reduced to useless hunks of metal. The proud vessels that had once commanded the galaxy were now floating helplessly in space, their crews experiencing something they had never trained for: complete technological failure. But this was just the beginning. Phase 2 of our plan was already in motion, though at this point in the battle, neither side had yet to grasp the full scope of what humanity had achieved. They still thought this was some kind of crude attack, a lucky shot that had temporarily disabled some of their systems. They had no idea that we had spent years preparing not just to disable their technology, but to completely revolutionize the way space warfare was conducted. The second wave of Earth ships was about to demonstrate why studying history, particularly ancient warfare, had given humanity an edge that no amount of advanced technology could match. As our forces moved in closer, both the Confederation and Imperial commanders were about to learn a harsh lesson about underestimating primitive species. In the command center beneath Mount Cheyenne, thousands of operators watched as the plan they had rehearsed countless times began to unfold. On the main screen, red dots representing enemy ships continued to lose power, while blue arrows showing Earth's forces moved with purpose and precision. The room was thick with tension as everyone waited to see if the years of preparation would pay off. The aliens were about to discover that humanity hadn't spent the last century just watching their war. We had been learning, adapting, and preparing to fight in ways they had long since forgotten were possible. As our ships closed in on their disabled vessels, we were about to show them why Earth's military history was filled with stories of smaller forces defeating superior enemies through strategy and innovation. But even as our plans began to work perfectly, a new complication arose. Deep space sensors detected additional ships jumping into the system, reinforcements that neither side had expected. The next few minutes would test not just our technology, but our ability to adapt and overcome unexpected challenges. The real question was, would our carefully laid plan survive contact with this new threat, or would humanity need to improvise? The fate of Earth hung in the balance, and we were only in the first hour of what would become the most significant 5 hours in human history. The galaxy was about to learn why you should never corner a species that had spent its entire existence learning to survive against the odds. The reinforcements that appeared at the edge of our solar system weren't what anyone expected. It wasn't just a few support ships. It was the entire Third Fleet of the Empire, led by their most decorated commander. Over 300 warships, each one larger than any vessel humanity had ever built, jumped into position above Neptune's orbit. Under normal circumstances, this would have meant certain defeat for any opposing force. But these weren't normal circumstances. As General Thompson watched the new arrivals on the command center's main display, a slight smile crossed his face. "Right on schedule," he muttered, causing several nearby operators to exchange confused glances. What none of them knew was that this massive fleet's arrival wasn't a surprise. It was part of the plan. "All ships, initiate Phase 3. Thompson's order echoed through the command channel. "Operation Trojan is go." Across the solar system, crews that had been waiting for this exact moment sprang into action. The disabled Confederation and Imperial ships that now floated helplessly in space were about to serve a purpose their crews never imagined. Our first waves had done more than just shut down their quantum technology. Hidden within the electromagnetic pulses were specialized data packets, viral code that had been slowly infiltrating their backup systems. As their crews desperately tried to restore power using ancient backup protocols, they unknowingly activated these dormant programs. The Third Fleet's commander, expecting to find an easy target, instead watched in horror as the supposedly disabled ships began broadcasting false sensor data. Their emergency transponders, now under our control, painted a very different picture of the battlefield. Where our small primitive vessels actually were, their sensors now showed massive capital ships. Our simple disruption fields appeared to their instruments as planet-killing weapon signatures. "This is why we study history." Dr. Rivera's voice came through on the command channel. "While they were perfecting their quantum tech, we were perfecting something far more dangerous: information warfare. They're fighting an enemy that doesn't exist, while completely blind to our actual positions." The next few minutes proved just how effective our strategy was. The Third Fleet, responding to the false data, began firing their primary weapons at empty space, while our ships slipped through their defensive formations undetected. Each shot they fired drained precious energy from their quantum cores, energy they couldn't afford to waste. But victory wasn't guaranteed yet. A young tactical officer, watching the battle unfold, spotted something concerning. "Sir, 3 of their command ships. They're running on different frequencies. Our spoofing isn't affecting them." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If even a small part of their fleet could see through our deception, the entire operation could be at risk. Thompson's response was immediate. "Initiate Protocol Omega. All ships, prepare for close engagement." This was the moment every crew member had trained for, hoping they'd never have to use. Humanity was about to demonstrate that we hadn't just prepared for one type of warfare, we had prepared for everything. From the holds of our ships, swarms of what looked like simple metallic spheres emerged. The alien crews, those who could still track our movements, probably laughed at what appeared to be primitive projectile weapons. That laughter stopped when the spheres broke apart mid-flight, revealing themselves to be autonomous drone swarms running on purely analog systems, technology so old it was immune to quantum interference. As the drones approached the 3 aware command ships, another layer of our strategy revealed itself. Each drone carried a payload of specially engineered particles that our scientists had dubbed quantum sand, microscopic machines designed to infiltrate and disable advanced technology from the inside out. The next few moments would determine everything. If this worked, humanity's victory would be absolute. If it failed, we had no backup plan. The entire solar system seemed to hold its breath as the drones closed in on their targets. In the command center, Thompson watched the tactical display with an intensity that made his staff nervous. Everything we had worked for came down to this. The first drone swarm made contact with the lead command ship's hull. Across Earth's command centers, thousands of operators leaned forward in their seats, waiting to see if years of preparation and sacrifice would pay off. The galaxy was about to witness either humanity's finest hour or our last stand. But something unexpected happened as our drones engaged the enemy ships, something that not even our most detailed simulations had predicted. The quantum sand began interacting with their hull materials in a way we hadn't anticipated, creating a cascade effect that threatened to spiral out of control. In that moment, humanity's carefully laid plans collided with the chaos of reality, and everyone, from the highest general to the newest recruit, held their breath to see what would happen next. In the command center, alarms began blaring as sensors detected massive energy spikes from the affected ships. Dr. Rivera's face went pale as she looked at the readings. "This isn't possible," she whispered, but the data didn't lie. What happened in the next few minutes would either secure humanity's victory or unleash forces that no one, human or alien, fully understood. The tension in Earth's command center reached its peak as everyone watched the energy readings continue to climb. General Thompson stood at the main console, his knuckles white as he gripped its edge, faced with a decision that would affect not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. The next order he gave would either save Earth or condemn it. The weight of that choice hung in the air as the chaos of battle raged across our solar system. The massive energy readings from the affected ships weren't just an anomaly, they were a warning. As the quantum sand particles interacted with the alien vessel's hull material, they created an unexpected reaction that our scientists had never seen before. The ships began to emit a strange, pulsing glow that seemed to distort the very space around them. "General, we're detecting quantum field oscillations at frequencies that shouldn't be possible." Dr. Rivera's voice cracked with concern as she studied the readings. "The interaction between our quantum sand and their hull material is creating some kind of cascade effect. It's like we've accidentally created a key that's unlocking something we don't understand." The alien ship's commanders seemed equally confused by what was happening to their vessels. Their communications, which we could now intercept thanks to our earlier infiltration, were filled with panic and disbelief. The humans, one Imperial commander transmitted, "They haven't just disabled our technology. They've awakened something we've spent centuries trying to contain." That's when we learned the truth that both the Confederation and the Empire had kept hidden for generations. Their war wasn't just about territory or resources. It was about containing an ancient force that predated both their civilizations. The quantum technology they relied on wasn't just for warfare. It was a carefully maintained frequency that kept something far more dangerous imprisoned in subspace. "All ships, fall back immediately." Thompson's order came just as the first command ship's hull began to crack, releasing waves of energy that defied our instruments' ability to measure them. The entire solar system seemed to shimmer like a heat mirage, and for a moment, every human and alien vessel in the area lost power completely. In the darkness of space, something stirred. The quantum sand particles, designed to disrupt advanced technology, had inadvertently provided a bridge between our reality and whatever the aliens had been keeping at bay. Through the gaps in the damaged ship's hulls, we caught glimpses of what looked like living darkness, tentacles of void that seemed to absorb both light and matter. "Sir," a young lieutenant's voice shook as she reported, "we're picking up similar energy signatures from every quantum-capable ship in the system, even the disabled ones. Whatever this is, it's spreading." The tactical display showed a terrifying pattern. Every ship that had ever used quantum technology was becoming a potential gateway. That's when Dr. Rivera made a connection that changed everything. "The war," she said, her eyes wide with realization. "They've been fighting for centuries not because they want to, but because they have to. The constant quantum activity from their battles was keeping these things dormant. By shutting down their technology, we've silenced the frequency that was keeping them contained." In the command center, General Thompson faced a decision that no human leader had ever contemplated. Our plan to end the war had worked perfectly, too perfectly. Now we had to choose between letting the alien fleets reactivate their quantum technology, essentially admitting defeat, or facing an ancient horror that even our advanced enemies feared. But humanity didn't get where we are by backing down from challenges. As Thompson studied the tactical display, he noticed something that everyone else had missed. The analog technology we had used, our primitive electromagnetic pulses and mechanical drones, seemed to be immune to whatever was emerging from the quantum gates. In fact, the areas where our ships were densest showed the least distortion. Dr. Rivera. Thompson's voice had the calm certainty that only came with a plan. What would happen if we reversed the polarity of our disruption fields? Instead of shutting down quantum technology, could we amplify it? Force it to emit specific frequencies? The scientist's eyes lit up as she caught on to his thinking. The next few minutes were a blur of activity as we reprogrammed our entire fleet on the fly. The aliens, both Confederation and Empire, watched in stunned silence as their former enemies moved with purpose and precision. Humanity had spent centuries learning to adapt and overcome, and we were about to show the galaxy that our greatest strength wasn't our technology. It was our ability to change our plans when they stopped working. But as our ships moved into position for this desperate gambit, the rifts in space continued to grow. Through the command center's monitors, we could see more clearly what we were facing: beings of pure entropy, ancient forces that had been imprisoned in subspace since before either the Confederation or Empire existed, and they were hungry after their long imprisonment. The next few minutes would determine not just the outcome of a war, but possibly the fate of our entire galaxy. As General Thompson gave the order to begin our counter-protocol, every human in the solar system held their breath. We had wanted to prove ourselves to the galaxy. Now we had to prove that we could save it. Time seemed to slow as our fleet executed the most daring maneuver in human history. Every ship, from the smallest drone carrier to our largest vessels, activated their modified disruption fields simultaneously. The effect was immediate and stunning. Waves of electromagnetic energy collided with the quantum rifts, creating a spectacular light show that illuminated our entire solar system. Energy readings are off the charts, Dr. Rivera reported, her fingers flying across the console. The frequency match is working. We're actually pushing them back. On the main display, we could see the tiers in space beginning to shrink as our combined energy fields created a new containment pattern. But it wasn't enough. The entities were too powerful, too numerous, and our ship's power supplies were rapidly depleting. That's when the Imperial commander did something unexpected. To all Imperial vessels, his transmission cut through the chaos. Divert all remaining emergency power to the human frequency. Full spectrum alignment. One by one, the massive Imperial ships still capable of generating power began adding their energy to our containment field. The Confederation fleet, not to be outdone, followed suit moments later. Their admiral's voice was filled with both pride and humility as she gave the order. All Confederation ships synchronize with human frequencies. Today we fight together or we die together. Across the solar system, former enemies united under humanity's leadership, creating a web of energy that began to push back against the cosmic horrors with real force. But victory was still far from certain. As we fought to close the rifts, the entities began to adapt. They learned, faster than anything we had ever encountered, probing our defenses for weaknesses. Each time they found a gap in our coverage, tentacles of void would slip through, pulling apart anything they touched. The patterns, a young analyst suddenly shouted, "They're not random. Look at the way they move. It's like an old binary code." Dr. Rivera rushed to his station, her eyes widening as she watched the entity's movements. He was right. These weren't just mindless forces of destruction. They were ancient data, quantum information given form and consciousness. General Thompson didn't hesitate. Upload the core code of our quantum sand to the containment field. If they're information, let's give them information they can't ignore. It was a desperate gamble, but we were running out of options. Our combined fleet's power reserves were dropping fast, and the entities were still pushing against our containment. The effect was instantaneous and astonishing. The quantum sands code, designed to disrupt advanced technology, began interacting with the entities in a way no one could have predicted. Instead of fighting against our containment field, they started resonating with it. The void tentacles withdrew, coalescing into distinct patterns that pulsed in rhythm with our energy field. "They're talking to us," Dr. Rivera whispered, watching as the patterns formed recognizable sequences. The quantum sand isn't just containing them, it's giving them a way to communicate. Through the combined sensors of 3 civilizations' worth of ships, we watched as the ancient data beings transformed from a threat into something entirely different. The entities, it turned out, weren't trying to destroy us, they were trying to warn us. The patterns they formed painted a picture of a threat far greater than our petty wars, a danger to all life in the galaxy that would arrive sooner than anyone had imagined. They had been imprisoned not because they were dangerous, but because they had tried to prepare previous civilizations for what was coming. As the last rifts sealed and the immediate crisis passed, humanity found itself in an unprecedented position. In less than 5 hours, we had not only ended a centuries-old war, but had also made first contact with an ancient intelligence that would change everything we thought we knew about the universe. The Imperial commander's next words would be recorded in every history book across the galaxy. We have spent centuries fighting each other, blind to the true purpose of our technology and the wisdom we had imprisoned. It took humanity, the species we called primitive, to show us what we had forgotten, that survival depends not on power, but on the willingness to see beyond our fears and unite against common threats. But even as the combined fleet began power-down procedures and emergency repair teams scrambled to assess the damage, something caught Dr. Rivera's attention. A single pattern, repeated over and over in the entity's final transmission before they settled into stable containment. When she finally decoded it, she kept the message to herself, sharing it only with General Thompson. The look they exchanged told everyone in the command center that while one crisis had ended, another was just beginning. Humanity had won its first interstellar conflict in just 5 hours, but the real challenge, the one the entities had tried to warn countless civilizations about, was still to come. As our ships began the long process of helping both Imperial and Confederation vessels limp back to their staging areas, every human knew that this victory was just the beginning. We had proved ourselves to the galaxy, but now we had to prove ourselves worthy of the knowledge we had gained. The next few years would test us in ways we couldn't imagine, but humanity had shown something important. When faced with impossible odds, we don't just survive. We find ways to turn those odds in our favor. The galaxy would need that spirit sooner than anyone suspected. 3 months after the battle that changed the galaxy, Earth hosted the first ever Trilateral Peace Summit. Representatives from the Confederation and Empire sat alongside human leaders in the newly constructed Unity Hall in Geneva, a building that symbolically combined architectural elements from all 3 civilizations. The sight of former enemies working together still felt surreal to many observers. Dr. Rivera stood at the main podium, addressing the assembled delegates about the ongoing research into the quantum beings' warnings. What we initially saw as a threat has become our greatest teacher, she explained, her voice carrying across the hushed chamber. These entities have shared technological insights that we're only beginning to understand. But more importantly, they've shown us that the greatest breakthroughs come not from conflict, but from cooperation. The changes throughout the solar system were dramatic. Imperial and Confederation ships now regularly dock at Earth's orbital stations, their crews mixing with humans in a cultural exchange that would have seemed impossible just months ago. The quantum beings, now safely contained in specially designed matrices, continued to share their knowledge through the communication protocols we had accidentally discovered. But it was General Thompson's closing speech at the summit that really captured the spirit of everything that had happened. 5 hours, he began, looking across the gathered representatives. 5 hours was all it took to end a war that had raged for centuries, not because we were stronger or more advanced, but because we approached the problem differently. We had spent years studying not just our potential enemies, but ourselves, our history, our mistakes, and most importantly, our capacity to adapt. The real breakthrough came in the weeks following the summit. The pattern that Dr. Rivera had kept secret, the final warning from the quantum beings, was finally decoded completely. It wasn't just a warning about a future threat. It was a blueprint for uniting the 3 civilizations' technologies in ways no one had imagined possible. The quantum beings hadn't just been trying to prevent a disaster. They had been preparing us to take our next evolutionary step as spacefaring species. Work began immediately on implementing these new insights. The same quantum sand that had nearly torn reality apart was now being used to bridge the gap between human ingenuity, Confederation efficiency, and Imperial power. Together, we started building something new, a defense network that would protect not just our individual territories, but the entire galaxy. As for humanity's role in all of this, we found ourselves in an unexpected position. Our primitive approach to problem solving, our ability to think outside established patterns, had become our greatest asset. The other civilizations didn't just respect us now, they actively sought our input on their most challenging problems. The first joint human-alien crew launched 6 months after the battle, embarking on a mission to establish the new defense network. Their ship combined human analog safeguards, Confederation quantum drives, and Imperial power systems in a design that would have been impossible before the war. As they departed, carrying the hopes of 3 civilizations and the knowledge of ancient quantum beings, everyone knew that this was just the beginning. Looking back now, it's almost funny to think that the galaxy once considered us primitive. Earth has become a center of innovation, where the best minds from all 3 civilizations come together to prepare for whatever threat the quantum beings warn us about. We still don't know exactly what's coming, but for the first time in galactic history, we'll face it united. The war ended in 5 hours, but what we built in its aftermath will last for generations. As I stand here in Unity Hall, watching representatives from worlds I once thought I'd never see working together to solve problems no one civilization could handle alone, I'm reminded of an old Earth saying, sometimes the best way to win a war is to make it unnecessary. The quantum beings continue their silent vigil in their containment matrices, sharing their knowledge at a pace we can handle. And somewhere out there, beyond the edges of known space, something is coming. But this time, when it arrives, it won't find divided civilizations fighting among themselves. It will find something unprecedented in the galaxy's history, a unified force of humans, Confederation, and Imperial citizens, armed with both ancient wisdom and new innovations, ready to face whatever challenges the universe has in store. That's the thing about humanity that the galaxy finally understands. Give us 5 hours to solve a problem, and we'll find a way to solve it for everyone.